Howdy, my name is Nonat, and welcome to another installment of the Pathfinder Spellbook. If you're new to the series, the Pathfinder Spellbook is where we look at a certain set of spells, discuss them, talk about what they do, what I think of them, and I give them a completely arbitrary personal rating out of 5, and then the comments tell me how wrong I am and how much they love their certain spells. In today's installment, we're covering every spell from H through P, and also, I need to clarify something from the past few episodes. There are certain spells, such as the Charm spell. Now, if you're unfamiliar, all spells come with traits, and usually these traits are pretty self-explanatory. Like the Charm spell you see over there, it has emotion, mental, and enchantment. They all make sense. But it also has incapacitation. Now, incapacitation is a very special trait. Most traits don't actually affect how a spell works, but this one is a little special. The part that I really want to point out is that incapacitation effects are based on the level of the effect and the level on the target. So, if you try to cast a level 1 charm spell on a level 3 enemy, it's not going to work as well. If the target is twice the spell's level or higher, then they treat their saving throw as one success higher than it states. So if they roll to resist your charm spell and they fail, they actually succeed because it reduces the effect by 1. This also goes for any spell attacks with incapacitation traits, where you roll against their DC, and whatever you roll is treated as 1 level lower, as long as the target is twice the spell's level or higher. This does give these spells more reason to be heightened to higher levels, because if you upcast Charm as a 2nd level spell, it can start affecting things up to 4th level. And then if you upcast it as a 3rd level spell, you can affect things up to 6th level. So Charm on its own as a blank level 1 spell, very useless after the first few sessions. After you've leveled up once or twice and you're fighting anything level 2 or higher, still useful if you do upcast it. With that said and retroactively handled, let's move on. Our first spell of today, and honestly one of my favorite low-level divine spells, Harm. Just simply Harm. It is only divine, and it can be cast as 1, 2, or 3 actions. This is a really cool system that they've implemented to very few spells, and hopefully they'll apply them to more spells as the game gets more books, with the Advanced Player's Guide coming out in a few weeks, and I'm really excited for it. But the long and short of Harm is the target makes a fortitude save. If they fail, they take 1d8 points of damage. But where that starts to change is with how many actions you cast it. Starting with the 1 action form, it has a range of touch and deals 1d8 points of damage if they fail their will save. This is a basic save as well, so if they crit fail, it's double damage. If they succeed, it's half. If they crit succeed, it's nothing. Now, if you spend 2 actions casting Harm, this doesn't spend an extra spell slot or anything. It only spends an extra action. It gains a range of 30 feet and automatically deals a bonus plus 8 negative damage. The spell gains a range of 30 feet. So you spend an extra action, you can cast it from a range. Now, for the 3 action version, it's really cool but really dangerous. You deal 1d8 negative damage to everything in a 30-foot area with you at the center. You throw out this burst of negative energy, and enemy or ally, if they're in that area, they're taking 1d8. So this is really cool for like a war priest who has 4 enemies on top of them. They just slam down Harm and deal this huge area of damage. It's also worth mentioning that if for any reason you want to heal undead, Harm does heal undead. Undead typically heal off of negative energy, and in fact, if you use the 2 action version of Harm with the 30-foot range, you actually heal an additional 8 points of damage to an undead target. This spell is amazing. They made it the bread and butter of clerics for a reason. It's a 5 out of 5 star. It only gets better the more you cast it at higher levels. It goes up by a full 1d8 every single spell level. So you're casting this at 5th level, you can deal 5d8 in a 30-foot radius to everything. Beautiful spell. Heal! There's honestly not much to say here. It works the exact same way as Harm. Except primal casters can learn this one as well. Harm can only be learned by divine. This one is divine or primal. But same thing. 1 action. You can touch someone and restore 1d8 hit points. 2 actions, you can point at someone at a 30-foot range and restore 1d8 plus 8 hit points, and 3 actions, in a 30-foot burst, you can heal everything around you for 1d8 hit points. Now, again, it's important to keep in mind that if there are living enemies around you, they will also be healed by the 3-action burst. But notably, if there are undead around you, this spell gets even better. A 30-foot burst that heals your allies and also damages undead. Specifically, undead always take positive damage and heal off negative. Another 5 out of 5 stars. As you upgrade this, good lord, as you upgrade this, not only does it go up by 1d8 healing, but specifically the 2-action version, which is usually the one you'll be casting, goes up by another flat 8. So let's say you're casting this as a 3rd level spell, you're healing for 3d8 plus 24. This spell is ridiculous. There's a reason there's not many other flat healing spells in the game. This one is made to be taken at any level where you want a nice boost to your healing. I love the way they did it in this system. God, this system loves triggering me and making me think of focus spells. Hydraulic Push, Arcane and Primal Domains. For 2 actions, you make a spell attack roll on 1 creature or object, and if you succeed, you knock it back 5 feet and deal 3d6 bludgeoning damage. Can we get Title Surge on the screen, please? The Water Domain Focus spell. Can you look at these? Yeah, one's a spell attack and one's a fortitude save. Effectively, if we look at them in the same light, this one knocks 10 feet and deals 3d6 bludgeoning damage. This one pushes 5 feet. Did I even point the right way? I pointed the wrong way. 3d6 bludgeoning damage and pushes 5 feet. That one just pushes 5 feet. That one takes a focus spell. That one takes a level 1 spell slot. Paizo, I love you, but good lord. Hydraulic Push gets a 4 out of 5 stars. 3d6 on a successful hit and 6d6 on a crit? That's insane. Level 1, 6d6 damage? Yeah, you can't add your spellcasting modifier, but compare that to anything with a 60-foot range. That's nuts. This is a great offensive spell. The next 2 spells are kind of similar, but I'll still cover them separately. The first one is Illusory Disguise. As a level 1 spell, it's not amazing. You basically can cast a spell on yourself to look like a kind of person. You can't recreate yourself as a specific individual. You can pick, a male dwarf, and you will appear as a male dwarf. Your clothing and everything does change with you, but at first level, your voice doesn't change, your scent doesn't change, nothing about you changes except your outward appearance. You do get a +4 to deception against people figuring out it's a disguise, but if you can't change your voice, it's gonna be a little bit difficult to get away with it. Now, heightened at 2nd and 3rd level, this gets amazing. At 2nd level, it hides your voice and your scent and changes both of those, and at 3rd level, you can take on the appearance of specific individuals. But at flat 1st level, not a great spell. 2 out of 5 stars, because without changing your voice and your smell, something's gonna give, And it only lasts an hour. Illusory Object kind of suffers from the same thing. Also, both spells are for arcane and occult spellcasters. Illusory Object's a little more interesting. You don't have to cast it on something, you can just make something appear that isn't really there. The problem is that at 1st level, it doesn't make any sound. No matter what, this thing will not make any appropriate sounds depending on what it's supposed to look like. The example they give is that if you create water going over a small cliff into a bucket, it'll look correct, but it will not make any sound of rushing water. Again, heightened to 2nd level, really, really good. And heightened to 3rd level, it lasts forever. And I suppose I'll give this one a 3 out of 5 stars, because compared to transforming yourself, making an object appear, especially at a distance, can be useful. And it's in a 20-foot burst, so that's a 20-foot area, which is huge. You could cause a pile of treasure to appear, or some distraction of some kind. As long as it's an inanimate, or even an animate object, as long as the person you're targeting or trying to distract is far enough away that they couldn't hear it, it's still pretty useful. So I think it's definitely better than Illusory Disguise, but still really not worth casting until you can upcast it to actually make sounds. Item Facade, for when you have no morals and want to make the poor shopkeeper spend his hard-earned money on a fake-looking item. Not fake-looking. The way the spell works for arcane and occult spellcasters is you can target one object that's less than 10 by 10 feet, so pretty dang big, and you can either make it look effectively one stage better or one stage worse than it appears. So if it looks in good condition, you make it look better, it'll look polished and well taken care of. If you make it look worse, it'll look old, decrepit, and dusty. And if something's already, like, kinda broken, you can make it look like it's intact and working fine, or you can make it look completely destroyed. It's worth noting you cannot cast this on destroyed objects. So even if something's destroyed, you can't upgrade it to make it look broken. It has to still be intact, but effectively, this is the spell to get more money for selling that old shield or sword you used to use and don't need anymore. It only lasts for 1 hour though, so expect to get caught at some point, but in the moment, as long as you're leaving town, this is a great way to make some extra money, and if you heighten it at 3rd level, it's just permanent. It's a fake illusion, as all illusions typically are, and it's not actually as nice as it looks, but if you cast it at the 3rd level spell slot, it will look nice forever. Now, it's worth noting as well that even if it looks perfect, the second another creature touches it, they don't have to, it's not an automatic thing, but they can make a seek they can make a seek perception check against your spell DC. And if they beat it, then they do realize it's a fake illusion. So watch out, it might not go as planned, especially if you're selling to somebody who knows what they're talking about. I'll give Item Facade a 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's fun. I think you could get in real trouble with it, but it's a lot of fun to roleplay around. Jump for Arcane and Primal casters is really simple. You touch yourself, and then on your next jump, you can jump 30 feet in any direction. Up, forward, backward, I guess. Now, it does say you have to land within 30 feet, otherwise you will just begin to fall. So if you try to jump a 40-foot gap with this 30-foot spell, at the end of the 30 feet, you will just drop straight down. It gets a lot better if you upcast it as a 3rd level spell, as it lasts 1 minute, and you can then start making 30-foot jump after 30-foot jump, as long as you have somewhere to land in between them. I'll give Jump a 3 out of 5 stars. You know, it does what it needs to do. No, I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 as a 1st level spell. 3 out of 5 for a 3rd, but for a 1st level spell, 2 out of 5 stars. Lock for Arcane, Divine, and Occult spellcasters. You hit something with the lock spell, and then it is clamped and magically locked shut, but can still be forced open or picked by a thief. The DC to open it is either equal to your spellcaster DC, or the lock's base DC plus 4, whichever one's higher. It's important to note you can only cast this on something that has a lock, so you can't cast it on, like, a crate that just has a lid. You know, you can't just cast it on things that don't have a lock on them. It specifically magically enhances the locking mechanism somehow. And what is nice is you can open it anytime. But if any other individual ever manages to pick the lock and open it, then the spell immediately ends. Though you yourself can dismiss the spell at any time from anywhere, even if you're on the other side of the globe. This does only last for 24 hours as a level 1 spell, so I'll give it a 3 out of 5 stars, really good in a pinch. If you upcast it to just a level 2 spell though, it lasts for an unlimited amount of time, so long as you pay 6 gold when you do so, just to count for the materials of the spell. Longstrider, the spell for if you are specifically running away from something for an extended period of time. In the last episode, we talked about Fleet Step, which for 1 minute increases your movement speed by 30 feet. The main difference between this and Fleet Step is that this one lasts for 1 hour versus 1 minute. So it's 1/3 the bonus, but for 60 times the time. So overall, you'll get more distance out of it. But because you can only cast it on yourself, I'm not quite sure how useful this is. I'm not sure how often just the wizard or druid needs to make themselves a little faster, especially when you can just cast Fleet Step. I don't know in what situation, unless it's a very extended chase sequence, I don't really see this being better than Fleet Step. It lasts way longer, but it's just so much smaller of a benefit. I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5 stars. Some of you might like Longstrider more than Fleet Step, but I think 30 feet per round for a minute is actually better situationally than 10 feet bonus per round for an hour. Mage Armor. Oh, Mage Armor. I love this spell. In every other system I've ever played, 3.5, 5th edition, I think even 1st edition Pathfinder, I hated this spell, because it usually lasted for like a minute, and it gave you +1 to armor class, but they have made it so much easier in 2nd edition. Mage Armor, for Arcane and Occult spellcasters, counts as your armor. You actually replace your armor with the Mage Armor. Take a shot every time I say armor. Effectively, you cast this, and it lasts until you make your next daily preparations. So even if you're on a 48-hour death march and you haven't slept, as long as you cast it when you prepared your spells, you still have your mage armor. It gives a +1 to AC, you can apply up to a +5 dexterity modifier to it, and it counts as unarmored. I really, really like this spell. It's basically trading one level 1 spell slot for a permanent +1 to your armor class, and it only gets better as you level it up. Granted, you have to spend the spell slots of these, but if you spend a 4th level spell slot, then you get +1 AC and +1 to all saving throws. I know we're talking about level 1 spells here, but it just gets better and better and better just for trading out a single spell slot. This gets a 5 out of 5 stars from me. I love this. It may not be used on every spellcaster, as again, you're sacrificing one of your precious spell slots, which could be spent on offense, for a permanent bonus to defense that might not even matter. You never know. That +1 might not matter, or it could save your life. That's the game you play, and I love this spell. Magic Aura, another one similar to Detect Alignment, Detect Poison, that I'm gonna kind of overlook because it's uncommon. Effectively, you point at something and you alter its aura. You can basically make it appear as stronger or weaker magic than it actually is, so if you have a super cool, powerful magic ring that you don't want anyone to know about, you can cast Magic Aura and then make it look like it's not super powerful. That's about it. There's a little bit more to it. If you cast it at 3rd level, it can conceal the aura completely. Kinda cool. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 star. It's a useful spell, but it's uncommon. You can't take it at 1st level. You can only take it if you find a scroll and learn it. So it's only for arcane and occult spellcasters. Magic Fang and Magic Weapon, I'm actually just gonna review at the exact same time, because they are the exact same spell, except Magic Fang is only for primal casters, and Magic Weapon is for everybody else. Magic Weapon enhances a weapon into a +1 striking weapon. What that means is it gets +1 to hit and deals an additional damage die. So if you cast this on a 1d10 greatsword, then that person gets a +1 to hit and then deals an additional 1d10 on top of the normal 1d10 greatsword. So it's really, really good. Magic Fang is the exact same thing, but only for natural weapons. So unarmed strikes, animal attacks, anything like that. Same thing. +1 to hit and an additional damage die. These both get 5 out of 5 stars for me. They cost 2 actions, they last a full minute, which, as I say every single one of these videos, is pretty much an entire encounter. To be able to use a level 1 spell slot to give yourself or an ally the effects of 2 runes, one of which isn't supposed to be available till level 5 characters, to be able to use that at level 1 is so good. Now, Magic Weapon specifically says it cannot target magical weapons, so it has to be a completely normal, mundane weapon to enchant it. Magic Fang doesn't say anything about that, so I'm gonna give them both 5 out of 5 stars, like I said, but Magic Fang is technically a little more useful, though I don't know how often you'll find a magic natural weapon. It's also worth mentioning, I've been using the term natural weapon, which I believe is a Dungeons & Dragons term. In Pathfinder 2nd Edition, all natural weapons like animal attacks and bites and stuff, those are all considered unarmed strikes. So everything I just said about Magic Fang just applies to unarmed strikes. Still a great spell. Magic Missile for arcane and occult spellcasters. What can I say that hasn't already been said about this spell? It's just as good as it is in every other system, and it also uses that really cool 1 to 3 action mechanic. And for every action you spend, you shoot 1 bolt that deals 1d4 plus 1 damage. That cannot miss. There's no way to reduce the damage. And you can even choose the targets for each missile individually. So if there's 3 enemies that are really, really weak, you can spend 3 actions, shoot 1 bolt at each one. They each take 1d4 plus 1 damage. And every 2 spell levels you heighten this. So if you cast this at a 3rd level spell slot, it fires an extra missile per action. So a 3rd level spell slot, you're shooting 6 missiles with 3 actions. 5th level spell slot, you're shooting 9 missiles with 3 actions. That's so fun. Can you imagine just getting a big handful of 9d4s? 9d4 plus 9? That's just so stupid fun. I love it. I want to see the classic wizard who does nothing but cast magic missile in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. One of you make it, one of you play it. Please, just roll as many d4 as you can. It's 5 out of 5 star, dude. It's magic missile. What do you want from me? For this next spell, I would like to point out a tweet from my Twitter account, which you should all go follow at @nonat1s. Your fighter gets injured. You, the cleric, try to heal him. Your heal spell does nothing. He turns to you, battered and beaten. You try again, still nothing.
He collapses in a heap. Icing spills across the floor. The fighter is a cake. You can't heal cake.
Or can you? As one of my friends so kindly pointed out, the mending spell. Available to all spell domains, the mending spell is exactly that. It's a healing spell for objects, like cake. You just restore 5 hit points per spell level to the target. So as a level 1 spell, it just restores 5 hit points to any object. You can cast this on that broken cake. You can cast this on your fighter's shield that maybe got a little beaten up during the fight. It's a really cool spell, and as you heighten it, you can also target bigger and bigger bulk items, as well as restore an additional 5 hit points. So really, really decent spell. It's obviously not as powerful as just healing someone directly, but, a broken shield is useless. So if you can just raise it back up over that broken threshold of hit points, then good stuff, man. Good stuff. I give that a 4 out of 5 stars, Not quite as useful as heal, but really good for healing your broken fighter cake. Mind Link, specifically for occult. I love the occult specific spells. They're few and far between, but they're always some cool, emotional, mental thing. And this one is 2 actions. Very simple. You basically Vulcan mind meld with someone and instantly transfer 10 minutes worth of explanation information to them. Anything you could explain in 10 minutes, you can transfer in 1 second. You touch them, and they instantly know everything. So if you have to tell them all the information on an incoming kobold attack that's going to come down the mountain and assault the city from the east side, you have all this information, bam, now the city official knows all of it. Simple as that. The only thing is they have to be willing. Really cool spell, 5 out of 5 stars, so useful for roleplay rather than trying to articulate everything to someone with a bunch of crap going on. Especially if you're in a rush. Arcane and Primal spell, negate aroma. It can be clever, but as a first level spell, it's almost useless. You can only cast it on a willing creature, and it just negates the aroma. The thing no longer gives off a smell. You can cast it on yourself, or an ally. So if your barbarian still hasn't showered, you can just cast negate aroma on him. But overall, it's pretty useless. You might think like, oh man, while you're getting chased, you could totally cast this and then hide and they won't be able to smell you. And cool, if it wasn't 2 actions per cast, so that's effectively slowing you down by 60 feet per round to cast this, because you can't technically cast while running, so they would just catch up to you anyway. If you cast it at 3rd level, I'll give it that. You can cast it on up to 10 creatures. Really, really good for hiding from, like, wild beasts and whatnot. But the missed potential for this is the ability to cast it on an enemy. Like, give them a saving throw against it, but something like a troglodyte, or something else that has stench. Stench is a debuff that's not used super often, but it can make things sickened just from ending their turn next to them. So it would be cool if a troglodyte came right up to you and you could just be like, oh god, remove aroma, and then you just don't become sickened, It wouldn't necessarily be the most useful thing you could do, but it would still be cool and roleplay, and it's a totally, totally missed opportunity. 2 out of 5 stars. It's not a good spell, but damn it if it isn't funny. Pass Without Trace, another almost useless first level spell that can be heightened and made useful. Only castable by primal spellcasters, you make it so you are way harder to track for 1 hour. It makes the DC to find your trail and follow it increase by +4 for anyone trying to track you, for anyone trying to track you. Doesn't affect your allies, doesn't affect your party members, doesn't affect your big stinky barbarian leaving giant footprints in the mud behind you. The only way this gets really useful is when it's upcast to 4th level, where it does affect up to 10 creatures around you. And this is definitely going to be the 1-star spell of the video. All of this and a spell slot, and it only gives a +4 to the DC to track you. Like, that's not a small amount. +4 is decent, but you could go through all of this, waste the spell slot, and it might not even matter, for a very, very small benefit in a certain situation of being tracked, and it's only for you. They can still track the rest of your party. 1 out of 5 stars. It's just not a good spell at all. Pest Form, arcane and primal spell. Definitely not useless, but it's a level 1 spell for sure. It's actually fairly complicated. I'll try to simplify it. You can turn into a tiny creature. The examples it gives are a cat, a lizard, a rat, an insect, and while you're in that form, you follow a very specific set of stats. Your AC is 15 plus your level, which is really good. Your movement speed is reduced to 10 feet per turn. You get a -5 weakness to physical damage, so you automatically take +5 from all physical damage. You gain low light vision, and your acrobatics and stealth go up by +10, but your athletics is reduced by 4. This is purely a recon spell. You turn into an insect to try to sneak into the enemy stronghold, listen in on the plan, and sneak out before the 10 minutes are up. It definitely gets better at 4th level spell slot, which turns you into a bird that can fly at 20 feet per turn. But overall, aside from using this as recon to scout out an area, not useful. I'll still give it 2 stars for the recon usage, but if you have like a ranger or a druid in your party that can just send an animal companion forward, this is going to be less useful. And our final spell of the day, potentially another one of my favorites, Phantom Pain. It's another occult-specific spell, so it's going to get that mental trait. And the target makes a basic will saving throw, and if they critically succeed, nothing happens. If they succeed, they take 2d4 mental damage. If they fail, they take 2d4 mental damage, plus 1d4 persistent mental damage, and they become Sickened 1, which gives them a -1 on everything they roll. Now, they can spend an action on their turn to make a fortitude save and get rid of it, and if they get rid of the Sickened, the persistent damage ends as well. But the worst case scenario is that you deal this, they take 2d4 damage, they waste one of their actions getting rid of it, which they can still fail. And if they fail, then you've not only forced them to either work on being sickened and take the persistent mental damage, or waste another action trying. This is so good for your team's action economy. And if they crit fail, they become Sickened 2, which means they have to spend at least 2 actions getting rid of this. Sickened does not go down on its own. And they take -2 on all their rolls, including their fortitude save to get rid of Sickened. All of this, and then if they are Sickened 2, if they don't get rid of both stacks of Sickened off of them that turn, they're taking persistent mental damage. This spell is so good, it's just so sticky, though the damage is specifically non-lethal. So another really good option if you want to torture someone and keep them alive, you sadistic bastards. But great spell. Every single spell slot you upcast it increases the damage by 2d4 and the persistent damage by 1d4. So if you're casting this as a 3rd level spell, you're dealing 6d4 plus 3d4 persistent and still inflicting that Sickened. This is a nasty spell. I love it. 4 out of 5 stars. Whew, and that is all of our spells for today. Guys, we are 2/3 of the way through the level 1 spells. Good lord, there's so many spells in Pathfinder 2nd edition. Granted, of course, I'm covering spells for all 4 schools, but still. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you liked what you saw, consider hitting that subscribe button and ring the bell to know exactly when the next video goes live. I want to give a huge shout out to my patrons. Off the top of my head, they are Trevor, aka The Conqueror, Quid Thulu. I do these live. I only edit out the parts that I want to edit out, and that's staying in. Troy Hughes, Paul Rand, Cole, and Jim. Totally didn't just cheat off the Discord for those last 2. Thank you guys so much for your support. I really continue to appreciate it every single day. I also appreciate the rest of my wonderful patrons. If you're interested, there are links in the description to my Patreon, as well as our community Discord, where everyone is welcome. We hang out, we talk about all things Pathfinder and D&D and tabletop everything. It's a ton of fun, and you're more than welcome to join. Thank you guys so much for watching. And remember, in the comments, if I got anything wrong or I insulted your favorite spell, please let me know in the comments. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear you defend your awful domain spells. They're terrible and you can't change my mind. But I love hearing from you guys. Replying to your comments is one of my favorite parts of this whole thing. So thank you so much for watching. And until next time, no nat ones.